Hello, I'm Malcolm Hazlitt. From childhood dreams to being part of an international company, that's Caryn Moseley, our guest next on OurTime. Hello and welcome to OurTime in this special Christmas week. Look, I've done the whole complete thing with the tie. A lot of people have commented on the ties, but this is probably the worst one I've got. Look, my very special guest is an old friend who's almost like family to me, Caryn Moseley. Welcome to OurTime, Caryn.
Thank you, Malcolm.
And I'm glad you could come on the show because you've been such a success story in life, I think, and that's what I love to share. So how did all this begin? Because I've known you since you were, is it 13 or 14?
13.
Right.
Yes, I was 13 and back then I entered a competition. So it was in the Messenger newspaper, the local rag, and basically saw a competition I could enter to get a free term at the Johnny Young Talent School.
Right.
So that was in drama, singing, dancing.
Yep.
And put in my entry and I got the 10 free weeks, and then I was there 15 years later, still there. So
but not only were you there as a student, you actually became the business manager for the school.
I did.
And at the same time, you went to uni and graduated from uni in?
I did a Bachelor of Business Information Systems, my honours, and I did Bachelor of Commerce, and it was with the University of South Australia.
Isn't it funny that it's still called Bachelor?
Bachelor, yes.
You'd think it'd be now person of or bachelorette. It's funny how some terms have changed completely in the world and some haven't changed at all.
Yes, no, definitely.
So what happened next for you?
Well, I mean, I guess being at the talent school, and it was really incredible. Like, I got to do, drama was my thing, and I had the chance to, to help teach classes. So I did that with Wilma Murphy, which was sort of quite amazing. And so I had the opportunity to really see from the, how classes were put together, how the shows were put together, how, everything, from your costumes, your scripts, the way that it was all run. And it was pretty incredible. And even back then I wrote a play. So I wrote a play for young kids.
You organised a group as well.
I did organise a group. So I had...
So you showed those early signs of being able to organise and sort people out.
I love doing that. I love getting, organising things, getting everybody, together and getting them to sort of work towards the thing that they're wanting to do.
Share an experience, I suppose, is another way to put it.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, so from there though, so you graduated from uni and then obviously, did you go head hunting or job hunting, or were you head hunted?
I went job hunting. So when I did my degree, I was very lucky that it was partnership with businesses. So I got the chance to work for a few different companies. And then I worked, back then it was for Arthur Andersen, which was the accounting firm of Accenture.
Which happened to be your single name.
Exactly. Well, it was an EN, but it was still quite similar. Yeah, Arthur Andersen. And then having that opportunity, I then looked at, they had a consulting company called Andersen Consulting, and I applied to work for them because the consulting piece really interested me because it was all around technology and business. So looking at bringing the processes of a business, bringing the technology along, and so that everything sort of worked seamlessly for people and they were able to do things more efficiently. And
it's also the ability to communicate, to understand what it is that was required in the first place.
Yes, yeah,
so
exactly.
You're still using those original skills in a way.
Oh, so many skills of everything I've done in life. I'm pretty proud of, and I'm proud of the fact that it's like building blocks, and I guess having my two boys, definitely Lego is something that I'm used to. I'm used to Lego.
Well, not
stepping
walking
on
around
it
with bare feet, I would hope.
That really hurts when you do that. But I feel, and even like when we do it, doing technology and when we're explaining it to people, really the building blocks of, using something like Lego is something that they do use in the different sessions that they run with new graduates that come into Accenture. Right. Like they'll do different...
Well, hang on, we haven't established how you got into this company.
Yes, well, I guess I applied and then I got the job, but I did actually...
What was the job at that time?
It was a analyst, so coming in as a technology analyst. So starting, I started as a graduate because I also wanted to go in it was a bit like working for the talent school. I wanted to go in at the bottom and work my way up. So I wanted to understand the workings of the organisation. I'm not one to sort of want to come in, I guess, midway through and then try to work out what's going on.
Yeah.
I really liked coming in as a graduate, so then I got to really experience it.
Well, that's the foundation
that way.
with the building
Yes.
blocks, isn't it?
So enjoy all that, learn. And then I did actually move to Melbourne, so that's
Yeah, well, so you
what
started
happened.
here in Adelaide. They obviously recognised your abilities and you moved to Melbourne.
Well, they didn't have an office in Adelaide, actually.
Oh, right.
So they didn't have an office here. So when I applied, it was a matter of if they wanted you, then they
had to
took
go.
you. Yeah, they took you over. So they sort of helped a little bit with moving. And
So by this time you're married
I'm married, yes.
and you had
So
two
Brett.
sons then?
No, I didn't.
Not
so
then.
this was no children, and maybe you could call Brett one of the children. So I have three
That's your
boys now.
husband. Yes, okay.
So Brett, we both decided, yes, let's move to Melbourne, and so he moved over with his company, and then I started with Accenture.
And how many people were in the company then?
Back then it was around 75,000
Right.
people.
How many now?
Now there's over 600,000 people globally.
So globally, it's
Globally.
a huge global company.
It's a huge company, yeah. It's a
Well,
lots of
basically
countries.
from Melbourne though, you were headhunted within the company to move.
So then in Melbourne, I worked there for about 8 years. We were in Melbourne and continued. So what we do in Accenture is we work for different clients. So I worked across different industries. So I worked across manufacturing, in mining industries. So I got a chance to really see the underbelly of a lot of companies and see how they operate, and then see how you would apply, change the processes to, fit the technology so that they could then do better business.
So just to explain what that is, it's as simple as saying the goods come in here or the people do this job here and that leads to that there, and you've got to work out how to plug that all together.
That's correct,
Like
yeah.
with things like invoicing or receiving things or keeping stock, sending out information to people when stuff is available. I'm making this up.
Yeah, no, it's
Am I on the
pretty
right
much
track?
on the right track. I
Right.
mean, having started, when I was with the talent school, I was in finance, and then that's when I came into Accenture. I continued the finance path and then also moved into human resources, so setting up systems for human resources. And then part of the finance role, that really plugs into everything. So it plugs into the supply chain, it plugs into human resources, obviously your finance or your books, and logistics, how you get goods moving around the place. Obviously payroll, which lots of people are quite interested in, making sure they get paid.
Well, of course. Strange enough. Well, you would have seen big changes in that because, people don't get a pay packet anymore like they used to, and it's an odd thing when nowadays almost no one's using money anyway. So everything is working because of the way people like you have set up a system.
Yes, yeah. It's all through the bank, and I mean the banking system is that's leaping ahead and quite amazing that we don't even have to go into the bank branch anymore.
No,
you can do it
you
all.
don't even see money anymore.
No. Do
you think that's affected business in a positive way? That, I mean, everything was sort of on a screen before, it was on paper first, then on a screen, and now we don't physically handle money in the way that we used to.
Well, one thing that I find interesting, I was having this conversation with my mum the other day around the cash, because I support the big issue. So the big issue is, there's homeless people that are selling the big issue around, nationally they sell it. So if you're, now that I'm in the city and I'm back, working and I get to go past these, women and men, I will buy the big issue every month, and that's the $10. And I have to actually go to the bank and make sure I have the money and I can give it to them.
Because they don't carry around an EFTPOS machine.
No, and it was something I said to Mum, it's something that would be good if they had like an ability to swipe, because I wonder if more people would stop and help them, because you just don't have the money. It's a bit like buskers, when people were busking and you'd throw your couple of dollars in.
Yes.
And it's something that I've actually got my boys to do. Like we will try to carry some change on us, because I really appreciate and respect people that they're trying to survive,
I know it's an odd question. It's not actually the subject that we're chatting about, but where do you think that that's all going to go? with cryptocurrencies happening around the world, banking being sort of away from the public who are earning the money in the first place, and not going to the bank and pulling out money or having a cash pay packet anymore?
I think, yeah, it's an interesting one because there's a lot of, you've got to watch, I guess, what thing you look to invest in. And I think people just need to be really, get the right advice, because otherwise you've got to, the way I look at it is, don't put money into something that you can't afford. So if you don't have the money to lose, don't do it, because
lose it.
No, just like you've got to be very cautious of, I guess, where you're putting your money, and we just have to be responsible for that.
Yeah,
what we're doing.
but you're advising companies on this at the same time, I would imagine, because companies are investing in these things.
Well, they're investing. We don't tend to go down that path of the currencies and what they would work. They generally have, especially in the big companies, like where, for example, utilities, like when it's gas, electricity, and the currencies, they have people that are like trading for them and doing all that type of work. It's a very niche business.
It is, yeah. Look, we're going to come back and talk about how you ended up in Singapore, because it's such an interesting story. Our special guest is Caryn Moseley, and we will be back in a tick. Welcome back to a special Christmas week of OurTime, and our very special guest, international traveller and extraordinary woman, Caryn Moseley, with a C.
Yes, with
Caryn
a C.
with a C. So, Caryn, we were just talking about how money is moving and changing, and how you've got to integrate those systems together to make businesses work. So you're in Melbourne, and then suddenly you're off somewhere else.
Yes, well, even before we went to Singapore, we ended up down in Tasmania. So we lived down there for a year. Then we came back to Adelaide, actually thinking we were going to be settling back down in Adelaide. And then I had both the boys then. So I'd had Jack and then I had Blake, and they were only 1 and 4, and I got sort of a call about a role that was in Singapore. And at the time I'd mentioned to Brett, and he was, okay, why not? Let's do it. So we did it. And originally it started out...
So he became a house dad for a while.
He did. So for 4 years he was at home, and which was really great for me, like, because the boys were so young. Like,
and probably great for him too.
Oh, yes, yeah, it was. But it was interesting because it's still difficult. It's difficult for a dad, like, to be at home. I mean, it's changed over those 10 or 11 years that we were there. But in the beginning, he did have to sort of find, groups that who could he connect with? How could he keep with community? So then he did find a great group of guys that he started to, he learned how to play golf, and he had a great time. And I mean, I must say, one thing that was really wonderful was when, like, his parents got to visit, or my parents visited, and Brett would take his dad and they'd play golf they'd go off to Indonesia, they'd go to Malaysia, because everything was so close,
Yes, we forget that in this country, that in other parts of the world, Europe and most parts of Asia, other countries are so close you can just hop over there.
Yes.
Half an hour trip that way, half an hour trip that way, and you're somewhere else.
Yeah, so much fun. And so we ended up...
But you were working extraordinary hours too.
Yeah, I would say so. In consulting, it's sort of peaks and troughs. I mean, it does remind me very much of being in the theatre industry, though, because when you've got a show that you've got to put on, you've got to do it. You keep going, and so this.
When it's got to open, it's got to open.
Yeah.
And I guess when you go live with the programs, it's got to happen.
Yeah. So we had
not quite like what's happening here and has happened recently with all of the COVID apps that took forever to become live, and total confusion. Like Victoria had total confusion. South Australia was sort of fairly lucky initially, but even then it's taken time to get everything up and running properly.
Yes.
And in a way that people would understand what's been happening with that, with QR codes. I guess that's the sort of thing you were doing, making all of that planning come together.
Yes, yeah, that.
But for a company.
Yes, for companies.
They should have got you to do this.
Yes, well, who knows? I mean,
who
there's
knows
so
what
many.
happens in the
yes,
future.
There's so many different things that we get involved in, and what we're doing, and that's what I love about the work I do. Like, it's really interesting. You're doing something different every day. There's no sort of.
But you've climbed the ladder now. What's now that you come back to South Australia? What's your official title?
Well, my official title is technology delivery lead. So I run different projects that we're running, so technology projects. So I'm leading, groups of people, which I love. So to get to, coach and mentor, especially the graduates that come in,
Right.
and get them.
The people that were just like you.
Yes, yeah,
that you
exactly.
completely understand because you've been through it.
Yes.
But it's not all about the this all the time sorting stuff out. It's about the human development, and you've been running some courses as well.
Yes, yeah. So within the company, I get to do different activities. So one of the things that I love doing is storytelling coaching. So we work in that space to sort of give the people the confidence to go and talk about whether it's a product, whether it's themselves, whether it's a system that they're putting in, so that they can actually put a story to it, so that it's interesting. And it's because I guess with technology it can be quite a bit boring, and also the technologists can use too much technology words.
That's
Just
blind them with science; they'll never know. Yes, I understand that, and I think everybody that's had to deal with learning computer skills or different programs, you start blind, is the truth. But if there's a simple way to understand it, a story involved, and that's the way you're thinking, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Well, there's one great one, like we look at anecdotes, analogies, how can we sort of simplify it so people understand, what's happening. And one that they do use to teach blockchain is they use like the Rubik's Cube. So, which again, the Rubik's Cube, as you go to the younger generation, sometimes they look at you funny, like, what is the Rubik's Cube? So you've got to be relevant as well. So you do have to look at, what am I going to use to explain something?
Right.
Across all the generations, because you may be talking to graduates, or you may be talking to people that have been with a company for 40 years. And, that has happened across the different companies I've worked with.
And the new technology that's occurring all the time, obviously. And new ways of looking, new language.
Yes.
Because there is new language. But how did you cope then? Because you've been dealing with companies all over the world. How do you cope with language barriers or different ways of doing things? Because the way we think is different, say, to the Asian way of thinking.
Yeah, very much. And when I've gone into different cultures, so working with, for example, I was in Thailand, what I tend to do is I tend to find somebody that's going to be like my buddy and the person that can be my interpreter, really. So I can use that person to sort of just help me to understand, okay, when this happens and they react that way, what might it mean, and make sure that I'm not offending anybody, make sure that I'm understanding what their challenges are and their concerns, and when they're happy too, like understanding, okay, which way should I be heading here? So it is a very, it's a really key thing that we have to be very cautious of.
What I find really interesting though is what you learnt when you were young with the schools. You didn't become the performer that perhaps you thought you might be at that time, but in a different way you've become exactly that.
Well, I have, and actually one thing that, when I say that the theatre really reminds me of technology, I mean, when we put in new technology, we do rehearsals. So we have to do cutover rehearsals, and we have to run it pretty much like a script. So you have every single step you're doing, and you can have thousands and thousands of tasks that you have to execute, and you have to know, has this task been done, and make sure the next one can be done, and
like
the next
doing
one.
Dialogue.
Yes. So it really, that's one thing I love. I think it's very similar to being on the stage, and you are, like, the spotlight does go on the team as far as, okay, is this done, is that done? They have, stage gates, which I guess you'd have your stage manager, moving things around and telling you what's next. And so there are a lot of similarities in what we do.
Is this what you thought you would end up doing in life?
I do believe it is, because, like, my grandpa is an engineer, and he was someone that I really admired, and I just feel like, and ironically, back at the time when I started the talent school, my grandpa had an engineering factory in Adelaide, and he'd taken me into the factory when he got his first computer system, and he was like, oh, I want you to work out how to run this. And that was all a bit daunting at that age. And
yes.
So, but I guess it was, the seed was planted maybe, so,
yeah, perhaps.
And this is where I am.
I remember when I knew you first, you said, one day I'd like to manage Disneyland.
Well, yes, and I love Disney, Walt Disney, and I love now that we have these great platforms on TV that you can just watch things, so many different TV shows about that, and we do watch a lot of the Walt Disney.
But do you think but that was the theme park. You wanted to manage the theme park.
Yes.
I'm waiting for that to happen.
I know, it hasn't quite happened.
Because I'm looking for the tickets.
I've gone and I've gone to Disneyland, and one thing that I guess I really loved is I did go to Shanghai back in 2019, and I've got this great photo that I love, with Walt Disney and Mickey. And, I've got my Mickey earrings on now.
Have you?
So I am my little Mickey Mouse.
Oh, okay.
Everything, Disney is pretty incredible. It is an amazing story.
Well, I suppose in a way it's because there are so many people like you working behind the scenes to make all of the information, all of the show business, all of the characters and so on flow. Because in a way that's the same thing, isn't it, really? It's just in that organising behind the scenes.
Yes, well now, if you go to Disneyland, you get like these bracelets that they give you, which is all like a technology tracking. So they know like which rides you've been on, they know where you're going, they know if you're staying at the hotel, and they can then make the experience pretty incredible, because the people, if they get you to scan that, they can talk to you like, oh, you've done this and you've been here, and would you like, what else would you like to do? They sort of can help to craft your experience.
And that's within the algorithms that they're picking up from there?
Yes, yes. Yeah.
And that's the sort of work that you're also doing?
It is. That's one thing that our company does around artificial intelligence and machine learning, and, it's pretty incredible. And I think, again, it's something that people are learning to sort of manage, because some of these things, especially like on our phones, we have our apps and we have things that,
it's become a way of life.
It has. But we can choose to turn some things on or off. And I think, again, people take responsibility for your own technology and what you have and understand it, so that you can make it work for you, not make it work against you.
Well, what I want is for this to work for me, Santa.
Santa? What do you want him to bring you?
Health and happiness.
Yes.
And we'll talk about that in a minute when we return with the lovely Caryn Moseley. Welcome back to our Christmas week on OurTime. Can I sing? Can I sing? Happy Christmas to you. No, that's birthday. Doesn't really matter, because we're here with our special guest, Caryn Moseley. And we've been talking about a whole lot of things, but we've talked about the influence of starting off very early in life, sort of theatrically, if you like, and learning to act, sing and dance. And how has that affected you in your work? Because you've developed quite a few interesting things.
Yeah, so what I am really proud of is I created a workshop. So it was I call it like a page to stage workshop, where people would write a story about their own life or something in their life, and then be able to get up and say that to a group of people. And it's really amazing how people connect and get, it's great for people to hear other people's experiences.
So you started this with your boys' school? I
started, so the idea was my idea, and just based on what I've done in theatre, and I got a theatre in Singapore, so when I was there, and I used that to create the workshop. So I took people from a classroom, so where they did the writing of their own story, so I helped teach them how to write that story. And it's amazing, people can write something in 10 or 15 minutes. You actually don't need to think about it too much, because really your own story, the story, just put it down on the paper.
It's your thoughts, isn't it?
It's your thoughts, and then we took that, and then we took it into a theatre and gave the people a microphone and got them to say it. And they were so, it even gives me goosebumps just talking about it, because it was so incredible. And what I did with Blake's school was I said, would they like to do the workshop? And so what they did was they said, yeah, sure. And so I then had primary 1 to primary 4 classes. 4 classes of kids come out, and they went through the whole experience, and it was just incredible. I really enjoyed it.
I think there's real value in everybody writing down their life story, because so you don't forget it on one hand, but also because we don't have a record to pass on to our families, to our kids, because we forget to tell them when we were young.
Yes.
Speaking of which, I remember, because we've known each other since you were very young, one day coming into my office and you put your hand on the door like that, and there on your finger was your engagement ring that had happened the night before. It's just, see, those memories are really precious to us all.
Yes, they are.
Every time I think of you, I actually think of that. It's the truth. Look, it's so close to Christmas. Would you like to give everybody a Christmas message?
Okay. I wish everybody a wonderful Christmas with your family and friends, and please stay safe.
I wish I had said that myself. It's just great having you on the program, Caryn. It's been lovely to reconnect with you now that you're back home in South Australia. Who knows where you're going to go next? And as Caryn said, we all the crew here at OurTime, everybody that works on the program, wishes very much the same for you, that you have a happy and safe Christmas. And we'll see you again early in the new year with a whole lot of new people and new programs. Until then, Merry Christmas and keep yourself nice. Till next time. Bye.